Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have for you 4 stories from the ProRevenge subreddit. Our first story today comes to us from Von Scranhammer, Military Revenge Story. Let's jump right in. This was back in 2013 when I was based in Holland, British Marine for context. I had been married to my wife for a little over 18 months when I deployed to Afghanistan. My wife had a job in the British delegation on base and got to know pretty much every Brit and their husband and wife. One day, we were directly targeted by a vehicle-borne IED. Now, whilst it wasn't uncommon for there to be a threat to coalition forces in general, being directly targeted felt more personal for obvious reasons. That was also the day I found out about an RAF guy back in Holland had tried it on with my wife. I found him on Facebook and, still feeling rather raw about Terry trying to blow me up, messaged him words to the effect of, "If you go near Mrs. OP again, I will put glass in your throat the next time I see you." The next day, one of my bosses, who was also RAF, messaged me on Facebook to say that this guy has been over to his office and basically tattled on me. He gave me a friendly warning and heads up that this guy could have gone to the MPs and reported me. I have no idea what would have happened, but I acknowledged the warning and said it won't happen again. My boss had my back and actually told him to wind his neck. Fast forward to when I got back from Afghanistan. A few days had passed and I was starting to settle into a normal life again. My wife brought it up after explaining she didn't mention it at the time due to my reaction the first time, that an Army Sergeant Major had tried to message her via Facebook. He told her she was beautiful and wanted her number. She promptly blocked him. I was pissed off to say the least, but I understand why she kept it until I was back on home soil. The next day, I went into our department and spoke to my other boss, an Army captain. I told him what had happened and he said, "Leave it with me." He basically had a chat with him and nothing came of it. I felt deflated and even more pissed off. That was until our senior military officer came into our department. He welcomed me back and asked how my tour was. Still pissed off, I said, "It was good, sir, with the exception of Sergeant Major Douchebag trying to get round my wife." He was understandably a little taken aback. About an hour or so later, he emailed me saying he feels the need to do something official about this. Something I had forgotten was that the Colonel and Sergeant Major belonged to the same regiment, so having one of his own behave like this had clearly gripped him. I told him the full story and provided screenshots of what Sergeant Major Douchebag had said to Mrs. OP. For this to go official, my wife had to provide a statement. Unfortunately, Mrs. OP is very non-confrontational and said she didn't want this to continue. I respected her wishes of not wanting to provide a statement, but hatched a plan that would be 3 years in the making. The timing is important. I emailed the Colonel and said that Mrs. OP has declined. However, I felt the need for some formal recognition, so I asked that Sergeant Major Douchebag write a letter of apology addressed to both my wife and I, which is to be signed and dated. This was granted, and I received said letter 2 days later. It said, "Lance Corporal and Mrs. OP, I'm writing this letter to you both to apologize for the torment and anxiety that you both must have felt from the messages you received from my Facebook account. To Mrs. OP, nobody should ever be in a situation where they worry about going to work because of who may come through the door, especially so when they have the added stress of a partner being operationally deployed at the time. The anguish that you must have felt at this time is immeasurable, and for this, I apologize. To Lance Corporal OP, being operationally deployed is stressful enough without the added stress and worry about family back at home. Support from home and loved ones is what carries many people through tough times whilst on tour. For any undue angst caused, I apologize. I regret any hurt and anguish caused by this issue and apologize wholeheartedly and unreservedly to you both. Signed, Sergeant Major Douchebag." I now waited. I saw out the rest of my time in Holland, moved back to the UK to my new base, and waited some more. Almost 3 years after I received the apology letter, I looked up Sergeant Major Douchebag's wife on Facebook. I had known the whole time we were out there that he was married, his wife lived back in the UK, and he has routinely tried to cheat on her. I sent her the same screenshot which I had sent to the Colonel. I also, before leaving Holland, printed off the emails between the Colonel and myself where I requested the apology letter. I blanked out the Colonel's details and sent the pictures of that. And then, lastly, I sent a picture of the apology letter, signed and dated by her husband, admitting what he had done. Once I saw she had read it, I blocked her, blocked Sergeant Major Douchebag and all his friends who had also been out in Holland at the same time. Why 3 years? I remember him saying, before he turned into a douchebag and tried it on with my wife, that he only had 3 years left to serve. If my timing was correct, he was months away from completing his 22 years and receiving a very nice pension. If his wife decided to go ahead with the divorce, she would take half of said pension, which would essentially F him over for the rest of his life. This right here is absolutely why you play the long game, because 3 years later, Sergeant Major Douchebag would probably have completely forgotten about this whole thing, and then all of a sudden, it comes back to kick him in the butt. Well done, OP. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our next story today comes to us from Dawn of the Dead 75. Wife stole from her job and me. I hunted her down and had her arrested. Let's jump right in. My first marriage was to a woman with bipolar syndrome, highly not recommended. When she was medicated, she was awesome, but she finally convinced herself she didn't have a problem and stopped taking her medication. I dealt with a lot over the years with her fake pregnancies, affairs, and lots of lies. She could never keep a job for more than a month or two. She would get a job, tell me how much she loved it for the first month or so, then something would happen, they would fire her, and she would blame everybody but herself. While in between jobs, I would find some of my items going missing, movies, collectibles, etc. I thought it was her, but I had no real proof. Finally, she opened her own business doing house cleaning. She was a neat freak who was very obsessive and good at cleaning. Despite her condition, she was very charming and likable, and soon had a large client base. I thought things were getting better. I was very proud of her. She was even bringing home more money than I was. Then came the night that she didn't come home. I was frantic. I kept calling her phone, no answer. I finally got a hold of her sister who said, "I want to start off saying it's not my fault." Turns out, when my wife showed up to her first clients to clean, there were police officers waiting for her. Apparently, my wife was not only cleaning her clients' houses, but cleaning out their jewelry boxes, purses, and other valuables. I finally get a call from her that night from jail. She's crying, begging for my forgiveness. I try to be sympathetic. She tells me they're going to let her out the next day on her own recognizance. The next morning around 7 a.m., I'm waking up to a knock on my door. I answer and find 2 uniformed police officers and a detective standing outside. I apologize for being in my underwear and let them in. They search our apartment high and low and ask me a bunch of questions. I am honest with them. My wife finally gets home later that night, once again apologizing profusely. At this point, I've decided in my heart that I am done. I don't let her know yet, knowing her violent outburst, but decide to plan with my family to move myself out of the apartment when she's gone one day. The first day of her trial arrives. She wanted me to come along for moral support, but I had gotten the flu that morning. I was vomiting into the sink. Meanwhile, she's screaming at me that I'm not being supportive of her, making my decision to leave much easier. My plan was to wait till she was sentenced and then move out while she was gone, avoiding any fights. But she kept getting extensions on her trial. So one day while she was at work at her new job, I called my father and brother over and we quickly packed up my stuff. As fate would have it, she forgot something at home and showed up when we were half done loading my stuff into the trailer. She started screaming and crying, wondering why I was leaving her, then jumped in her car and sped off. I moved back in with my parents and started digging. Turns out, she wasn't only stealing from her clients, she was stealing from me and my parents when she would come over to visit. My mother told me that she had been missing some gold jewelry from her childhood, but didn't want to point fingers. I myself, upon going through my items unpacking, discovered my entire collection of 12-inch Star Wars figures that I had collected for years was nowhere to be found. I found out later she had put them on Craigslist for a fraction of what they were worth. I also found out that she opened up an eBay account in my name, took pictures of my nephew's Nintendo Wii, during this time Wii was hot, and sold it to multiple people but never sent it out. She pulled the cash before eBay could do anything. Cue the revenge. Here comes the fun part. Despite her being a thief, I, on the other hand, had worked retail security for going on 21 years. It's my business to catch thieves, to hunt down scammers, so she picked the last person she should have effed with. Turns out, my ex-wife stopped showing up for her court dates and moved out of our apartment. She vanished. The courts couldn't find her. So I started digging, found out that she moved in with the ex-girlfriend of a friend of mine. So I opened a fake Facebook account under a random name. I friended her new roommate. She openly began talking about my ex as her roommate, confirming that she lives there. I told her that I had a bunch of Twilight promo merchandise which they loved. I wanted to send them. She happily gave out her address. I called that county sheriff's department and informed them that I knew where a fugitive with warrants was hiding out. They showed up and arrested her on Valentine's Day. She ended up spending the next several months in jail while going through her trial. She was convicted of 5 felony counts of theft and ended up being sentenced to 8 months in prison. I don't want to speak bad of her, but I feel really bad for the people she victimized. It turns out some of the jewelry she stole from some of her clients belonged to parents or grandparents long gone, mementos that these people should have had of loved ones that she stole to make a quick buck. Oh, and I want my Star Wars toys back, you bee. Now, one thing I want to point out from this story is that bipolar disorder doesn't make a person a piece of crap thief. Being a piece of crap thief makes you a thief. Stealing is not a symptom of bipolar disorder. I just felt like OP was trying to blame the whole thing on the disorder, and wanted to point out that that's just not right. Our next story today comes to us from TC Rambo. Owners didn't want to give me what I deserved. Now they are about to lose a $3 million contract because I resigned. Let's jump right in. I am a young project manager for an unlimited commercial GC. I picked up a hammer for the first time 6 years ago, no prior experience. I was raised believing if you work hard and apply yourself, you will be successful. For 2 years, I learned everything that I could in the construction industry, took my work home with me and studied on my own time to better myself. For that, I was promoted to foreman. I was brought in to take over a small project at a 12-building, 120-unit condo complex. It started small, and the board of directors for the HOA told me they loved my professionalism, work ethic, and ability to complete projects on time and under budget. We won a big contract because of that small project. This was 3 years ago. I have since taken over the job of foreman, superintendent, and project manager. I do the billing, meetings with engineers and board members, scheduling, takeoff, material ordering. I even trained the subs on application of new products because we didn't have enough mid-management. The project just passed $2.7 million. We got a bid request for another $3 million job in the same complex. All the while, the board of directors telling me how appreciative they are and how they've gone through 5 different contractors in the years before committing to my company because of my management and quality of work. This boosted my confidence, and I went to the owners asking for the raise they promised me 1 year ago for my production. They told me, the experience you're gaining is far more valuable. I said, you're right. I put my resume on public, got contacted by a headhunter, just accepted an offer this week for $80,000 a year salary, full benefits, 28 days PTO including holidays, in the office now, no more working from the field full-time in my own truck, laptop, Wi-Fi on my truck for on-the-go billing when I visit the out-of-state projects, $80 per diem, 100% matching 401k for the first 3 years of my employment, and a quarterly bonus program. The company I'm with now only pays me $40,000, and that's with none of the above listed benefits. The final nail in the coffin was when the owners bragged about how much my project made in a company meeting, and then denied me a Christmas bonus. I laid this offer on their desk Friday and watched their jaws hit the floor. I told the HOA board president of the project I'm running about my resignation when they couldn't match my offer. His eyes got big and requested a meeting with the owners and expressed serious concern about moving forward with the new project without my involvement. They don't have anyone to replace me, and I'm not gonna lie, it feels good to hurt their pockets when I gave them everything I had for 6 years and only asked for the median project manager salary. F those greedy bastards. So you're saying that management thought you were smart enough to know your job, but not smart enough to know your worth and look elsewhere to be paid what you actually should be paid. Management in that company was a bunch of morons. Not gonna lie, I was kinda hoping this would end with the new company getting the contract for the condos, but I guess that's not how it went. Oh well. Our last story today is a short one that comes to us from Hey There Monkey Boy. Wage theft revenge. Let's jump right in. I worked in maintenance for a religious organization that owned a large number of aged care facilities. Even though they were supposedly not for profit, they went all out to scam the government for as much money as they could. For example, I once saw a claim for wandering behavior in a bedridden resident so they could claim he had dementia, put him in a locked ward, and get extra money. I became aware that they were paying less than the minimum wage for many of the non-nursing staff. A high percentage of housekeeping were from overseas, and God told them they could get away with it. In my country, you can claim back wages for 6 years, and it so happened I was just about to reach that mark, and I was thoroughly sick of their hypocrisy. I scheduled a meeting with the care manager and human resources. In the meeting, I requested to be paid the correct wage. After they realized I was not going to back down, they agreed to pay me correctly and would back pay me, but only if I didn't tell the other employees. I declined, and it ended up costing them over $700,000 to back pay everyone. I was recording the conversation and took them to Fair Work, an independent workplace ombudsman. They made everyone with the same job description as me redundant because they couldn't think of a way to legally fire me, and then outsourced maintenance, which ended up costing them much more. I took a nice holiday with the redundancy pay and informed on them with documented proof to the government aged care regulator for the fraud. They were inspected with a fine-tooth comb, and 2 of their flagship homes were put under 6 months constant government supervision. Always remember that wage theft is the largest crime wave in history, it is ongoing, and no one ever goes to jail for it. Throughout this story, I couldn't help but feel absolutely horrible for all those seniors under the care of this place. It seems to me that when people get old, we just toss them into a care home and kind of forget about them there. But I think people really should be spending as much time as they can with these older people whenever they can to make sure that they're living out the rest of their years the best way they possibly can. And that would not happen in a place like this. Check out all 4 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.